Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dallas Daily Show, coming at you from the Neighborhood Loan Studio here in St. Louis, Missouri. It is my favorite time of week. It is time for the Midweek MindSHIFT. Today's conversation is borrowed wins. All right, let's get into it. All right, all you mind shifters out there, you know this time of week. Again, one of my favorite times. We go a little bit longer in here on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays of the Daily Show. We try and keep it about 7-8 minutes, but we dive in a little bit deeper on the midweek so that we can have a mind shift toward the future version of us we ultimately want to become. Again, if you've listened to these for any length of the time, we've got the original Mind Shift series in the show notes below for you. But if you've listened to these for any length of time, you kind of know what we're talking about. A lot of times we get stuck in old triggers, old beliefs, old behaviors, and it's kind of keeping us in this cycle and in this loop, and it's keeping us moving toward a future us that we want to avoid. And we always talk about there's a future version of you out there. There's kind of two versions, right? And there's the future you want to avoid, and then this other one, the future you that you want to become. This future you that you want to avoid, this is the person who's all kinds of sick, all kinds of unhealthy, all kinds of broken relationships, not where you want to be spiritually, physically, professionally, financially, mentally, emotionally, Add any other LY words behind that and you pretty much have it. This version of you want to avoid. And what a lot of people do with a mindset is they go in and they're like, oh, I'm just going to make this little tweak to my mindset. Well, no, that means you still have a set mind and you're going to have limited growth. The mind shift that we are talking about is a 10x shift, right? So there's this great book called 10x is Easier Than 2x. It's a great business book, but it speaks actually a lot about future self, which I found very interesting when I read it. But one of the things it says is 2x growth, just a little bit of incremental growth, is a linear approach, and it's based on small little improvements. That's kind of how I think of mindset. I'm going to make a little bit of growth, Oh, I had a little bit of breakthrough, all of that. Mind shift is the 10x growth. It's actually saying, no, there's a future version of me out here that I want to become. I'm so in love with this idealized version of who I can be that when I think of my future, this excites me. The mind shift is the 10x saying, okay, instead of making tiny little micro adjustments, how do I have an overhaul on the way that I think, on the way that I believe, on the way that I behave, on the way that I respond rather than react? And we begin to pull from that future version of us into our present. So that's kind of the whole premise of these. Quick overview, but let's talk about this idea of borrowed wins, because I think it's one of the most important things that we can do when we're talking about actually shifting into future you, becoming this future self. You ever seen those commercials where it's like decadent food or something, and they say at the end, your future self will thank you? Probably shouldn't do it around food or around, any of the other sedation vices that a lot of us carry. But there is a future self that's saying, no, thank you for making the choice today to be healthier. Thank you for making the choice to be more integrated. Thank you for making the choice today to be more loving, because the choices we're making today are putting us on that right trajectory. And there's some places in our life where we're already winning, where we're already having those championship moments, where we're already moving toward that future version of us that we want. You are winning in certain areas of your life. Now, on this pod, we talk a lot about the 4 basic areas, which is spiritual, physical, relational, and professional. There's a lot of other subcategories in that: mental, emotional, social, occupational, financial. There's a couple other, subcategories in those wellness factors. But if we focus on those 4 key areas, spiritual, physical, relational, and professional, what we can find is there's some areas we're really crushing it. Right now, I am crushing it in my marriage. Just absolutely winning in every way possible. My wife and I cannot wait to see who the other person is becoming. We are standing side by side and looking toward a future we both want for both of us. Now, there used to be times in our past where we were standing nose to nose against each other, right? And we were combative and we were challenging each other, and we weren't, and we used to say this phrase, get on my team. That's how we used to view our marriage. But now we're both facing the same direction, looking out toward the future of who she is and the future of who I am becoming, who we are becoming, and we're filled with excitement. And so even our decisions in our home, there's been so much healing in our marriage after frustration and depression and anxiety and all of the stuff that occurred, that we were nose to nose, and now we're side by side and we're facing forward. And in that, we're actually seeking the same future together. So decisions are easier. All the stuff is just easier, right? Intimacy, transparency is easier. Real living, even when we do have these moments of like, oh, hey, can we talk about this? Hey, time out. Can we have a team huddle and get back on the same team? Like, can we get back on the same goal, vision, mission with each other? Absolutely. That's one area I'm currently crushing it, living the best I can. And I'm going to tell you a really fun thing, all right? My kids aren't listening to this podcast. So this episode airs on Wednesday. On Friday, we're picking up a dog. We've never had a dog. We've never had a pet. I'm super excited about it. And I'm telling you this story for a reason, because I'm going to talk about how we borrow wins, borrow victories, borrow emotions, okay? So we're picking up this dog in a couple of days. My 7-year-old, he's almost 8, but he is going to go level 10 ballistic. I really think the 11-year-old is going to go that way too. 14-year-old, he's excited, as teenagers would be excited, but they don't know this dog is coming this week. They just know, hey guys, we've talked about getting a dog. And they're like, yeah, that's something. The 14-year-old, yeah, that sounds cool, Dad. And the younger two are a little more like, yeah, it would be fun to have a dog in the family. All right, so this morning, what was occurring was my wife and I were sitting and we were doing our morning coffee. We had each done our personal prayer time, and then we come together and we kind of have our time together just briefly before we wake the kids. We wake super early, by the way. But we're having that moment, and we started talking about, hey, on Friday, logistically, I'll be driving in with the dog. Why don't you come and meet me? We started going through all this stuff. And she was like, oh my gosh, Arrow and Arthur and Lex are going to go crazy. And she was like, and I want them to, but part of me, I know I'm going to want them to pull back. So she's imagining all of this stuff. She's like, they're going to go nuts, but I also don't want them to go so crazy that they get, aggressive. And I'm like, babe, it can be level 10. It can be what it is. But she's smiling and she's feeling the excitement of a mom, and she's literally getting the dopamine in her of all these things that she's super excited about. And pause that really quickly. There's other areas of our life where there's a little bit of consternation and a little bit of frustration, some professional stuff that she's dealing with her work, and some other things where like, this isn't quite working right. That's not quite working right. There's some things in me personally not quite working right. And so I know those things exist. Those frustrations and those pains exist. But on this other side is all this excitement and all this like, oh my gosh. And we were totally feeling Friday's vibe on a Wednesday morning. And then I'm going to talk to you about how we began to apply that vibe to the other areas where there's frustration. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about our sponsors. If you are a business professional and you're looking to lose 25 to 50 pounds of that stubborn belly fat over the next 90 days, I want to tell you about one of the programs from our sponsors, the Shed Fat Fast program with Joel Staley. Joel has helped over 1,500 clients lose all of that fat, get in the best shape of their life, and he does it with a proprietary fasting protocol that's guaranteed to get you results without giving up the food that you love. I know it works because I'm in the program right now, and I'm telling you, this thing is getting me results. I know it can get you results as well. He's got a free training for you. Go to shedfatfast.com. That's shedfatfast.com. Check out his free training. And when you call in, be sure and mention that you heard about it from the Dallas Daily Show. Hey everybody, I just want to give a quick shout out to our studio sponsor here at Neighborhood Loans Studio in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're in the market for a new home, look no further. Their 5-star team is excellent. They can help you get what you need. And I can personally connect you with their team, or you can check out their website, neighborhoodloans.com. Again, that's neighborhoodloans.com, or feel free to call them 314-658-9400. Again, that's 314-658-9400. And even though the studio's located here in St. Louis, Missouri, they can service you nationwide. So trust me when I say you are in the best hands with Neighborhood Loans. All right, so let's talk about this idea of borrowed wins a little bit deeper. So I laid out this concept that my wife and I on a Wednesday morning are feeling all the feels of what Friday afternoon is going to feel like when we're going to bring this dog home. And we know there's going to be a high level of excitement. We know there's going to be a high level of emotional energy. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for adding this new family member. I've never had a dog, not even in my childhood, didn't have a pet. My mother and my sister were like deadly allergic. So I'm really stoked about this idea that I get to do this with our family. In that moment, though, knowing that there were all of these other things that were like a little lower frequency or some levels of scarcity. Oh my gosh, is this going to happen in time? Oh my gosh, what's going to happen with that? There's all these other areas where there was, I will say, anxiety, scarcity, maybe even a little fear in some areas, or frustration in some areas, because those still weren't quite working yet. But this area, my spouse and I, my wife and I, we're crushing it. We're adding this new family member, our dog, little Pepper, by the way, in case you ever want to ask me. Pepper, she's so cute. She's so cute. Her picture, she's so cute. She's a Corgi Poo. She's a mixed breed, Corgi and Poodle. She's adorable. Taylor's laughing over here off camera. So this is happening, and my wife is feeling the feels, and she's so excited. I can literally, on her face, see the butterflies that she's feeling. And I said, hey, pause really quickly. Tell me what you're feeling right now. And she began to explain it. And I said, okay, that same feeling, I want you to take that feeling and put it over here to this professional thing that's bothering you. Can you pull that feeling over and bring that vibe and that frequency and borrow that win over here and do the exact same thing? And so she began to think about that thing that's been frustrating her, and she closed her eyes. She was sitting there in her chair. She closed her eyes and she was like, oh, yeah, I could, hold on. If I did A, B, and C, I think that would solve it. And literally, the solution came because she was feeling the frequency of the excitement. Not, she's been stuck in strategy over here. How are we going to deal with this? And oh, is that even going to be done in time? When that project going to finish? And she's been so caught, quote, in her head. When we were able to get her in her heart on another thing, we were able to then borrow that emotion, borrow that frequency and that vibration, borrow that feeling. And the moment she was able to bring that feeling over, I'm telling you, guys, within like a minute, she goes, oh, I could do this and this, and I bet that would give me the same feeling. That's the idea of a borrowed win. I speak in front of a lot of different groups. When I go out and keynote places, I crush it. I'm just really good at that. But there's other environments not as good in, right? There are things, though, that I do really well. I have to get in the feeling of what those things feel like when I am succeeding or when I'm just absolutely crushing it. Can I pull that over? And that's the same thing for you in your life. Think about those 4 areas again, right? Think about the idea of spiritual, physical, relational, professional. Where are you crushing it? Where are you in just the zone? That you're in the pocket, you're like, man, I'm doing really well in my health right now. But my relationship isn't what it needs to be. Or, oh, I'm doing really well at work right now. But our finances aren't where they need to be yet. Oh my gosh, I am destroying it in all the right ways as a dad. Like, bam, crushing that, killing that. I'm doing it. I'm an amazing father. But that leadership isn't carrying over to my workplace, or vice versa. I'm an incredible boss, but man, that leadership isn't carrying over to my home environment. My kids and my wife and my spouse and my family, they're not seeing me as the people in the professional world are seeing me. Is there a way you can borrow the win? And here's how you do it. You first have to know where you're winning. You first have to acknowledge where you're winning, and don't acknowledge where you're winning. Listen, Linda. This is so important. Too many of us pull back on our greatness. There is an area of your life where you are doing great. There's an area of your life where you are experiencing exponential success. Do not do yourself the disservice of going, well, I'm doing really well, but the other shoe might drop. Don't pull back. Embrace your greatness. Celebrate the giftings, the talents, celebrate the wins, celebrate the places where you are excelling. We don't need to we don't need to shrink back from greatness anymore. We need to lean into it. We are becoming that person in every environment. So first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge, where am I doing well? Where am I leaning into my greatness? Then the second thing you have to do is you have to begin to feel the feels. What does that feel like when I am in that pocket, when I am winning so well, when I am crushing it in all of those places? So number one, acknowledge the greatness. Number two, feel the greatness. I'm doing it. Here's what it feels like. Then begin to say, can I recreate that feeling in other areas? That's the leap. That's the big gap. If you can acknowledge where you're doing great and you can feel the feeling of all of that, then what you have to do is you have to ask yourself the all-important yes question. Is it possible for me to carry over that feeling into the places where I'm currently in scarcity, into the places where I'm currently in anxiety, into the places where I'm currently struggling, suffering, or possibly even losing? Can I carry the feeling of winning and the strategies of winning from one area of my life to the places where I don't feel like I'm quite winning yet? That is what's known as a borrowed win. Borrowed dopamine, borrowed emotion, borrowed feeling, borrowed championship living to the other areas that you can now begin to progressively improve, and over time you will win in every area. So my challenge for you, my friends, is this. Can you acknowledge where you're winning? Can you acknowledge the places where you are fully embracing the future version of you? Can you say to yourself, yeah, I'm doing well, with no caveats? Don't put any comma but on that. Quit with the comma but. It's, can I acknowledge where I am winning? Oh yeah, I'm doing well in this area of my life. What does that feel like? Oh, it feels like this, feels like that. What are the patterns of winning? Oh, well, I'm consistent and I'm showing up as my best self and I'm giving to others and I'm doing that. Oh, yeah. Here's what I'm doing. Oh, awesome. Great. Now, can we apply that same feeling? Can we apply that same pattern? Can we apply that same strategy of success and winning to the other areas where you currently feel scarcity? You don't have to lose anymore. Celebrate the wins, carry over the feelings, and lift the rest of your game. That is the mind shift that's going to put you on an ultimate transformation in your spiritual, physical, relational, and professional elements of who you are. That's how you win, my friend. That is how you get on the trajectory holistically toward the future you ultimately want to be. So that's it, my friends. That's all I got for you today. Come back tomorrow. We've got another conversation about to occur. We're going to kind of stay on this idea of borrowed wins tomorrow. Be sure and join me for that. But until then, my friends, have a championship day.
Thanks for listening to my dad's podcast. For more tools, go to DallasDailyShow.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.